My book, Resilience, Adapt and Plan for the New Abnormal of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, helps you do just that. Unfortunately, we are in a tough spot. Our future until widespread vaccination is a combination of shutdowns and social distancing, where we will see, after a shutdown, looser restrictions and then an increase in cases, then tighter restrictions and a decrease in cases. And there will be repeating waves of this going on and on and on until we get a vaccine. Unfortunately, this is not a short-term emergency in terms of getting a vaccine. It's a major disruption because we will not get a vaccine, even in the most optimistic scenario, until the beginning of 2022. So we're in a tough spot. Now, this is not easy to hear. This is hard for me to realize myself. I struggle with this information. And when I talk about this to my clients, my consulting, coaching, and training clients, they struggle with this as well. What really helps me deal and helps them deal is realizing that the sooner we adapt to this information, the sooner we can plan for that, the sooner we can actually make a difference for our long-term self by addressing the situation, whether for us as individuals or for our businesses and organizations. And so that's what you want to understand, that the world will change forever. We're never going back to January 2020 because after a bunch of wave of disruptions, restrictions, and so on, even in the most optimistic case until early 2022, more pessimistically and maybe realistically until maybe 23, 24, 25, when the vaccine is available and widely distributed, people's habits, values, expectations, norms, desires, they'll all change. We'll never go back to January 2020. So what you need to do in order to prepare is make long-term changes to your plans. Think years, not weeks. That's what you got to be oriented toward. Now, as an individual, how can you prepare? You want to address your physical safety from everything from food supplies to prevention of COVID-19, so CDC guidelines, masks, and so on. Your mental safety, you want to be able to replace the kind of things you are losing realistically through these waves of restrictions and problems. Your ability to connect to others, you're going to do a lot more virtual connections and you need to be able to do that effectively. And your sense of purpose, what's your mission, what's your calling, how do you accomplish that in the context of COVID-19. That's individuals. What about businesses? Well, what businesses need to do is fundamentally change their underlying business model, and nonprofits as well, their organizational model. Focus on a future based on virtual interactions and make a commitment to virtual teams and virtual offerings. That means changing your internal business model, and there are specifically 6 areas of change. Your internal controls, motivating and engaging your people, effective communication, training people on effective communication in virtual teams, resolving conflicts, noticing them and resolving them in virtual teams is a new area for many people. Cultivating trust. You want to make sure to cultivate trust in virtual settings where people don't see each other, don't have that natural bond, and ensuring accountability, internal accountability, both up the chain of command and peer-to-peer. Then you have 6 areas of external business model changes. So you want to change your service delivery, of course, to be as virtually oriented as possible. You want to figure out how to cultivate relationships effectively virtually with both existing relationships and new relationships with external stakeholders. You want to be able to manage disruptions from external stakeholders who won't be as savvy as you and won't plan for the long term. Think about the shifting norms. That's the 4th area. Our norms will shift, our behaviors, values, desires, as I mentioned before. So you want to get ahead of the curve and figure out what the market will want ahead of time. Unknown unknowns. The pandemic was a predictable disaster, and you can think about and predict other unknown unknowns if you scan the environment effectively. And finally, outcompeting your competition. You will get ahead of your competition if you take the steps that I suggest, and your competition will stumble. Figure out how you will take advantage of the situation to seize market share. Then plan for the long term. How do you actually do that? Well, there are 6 areas again to planning for the long term. Think about the possible futures, the optimistic future of early 2022 vaccine, maybe moderate future of vaccine in 2024, pessimistic future of vaccine widely available by 2027. Think about 5 years out. What would your future, you as an individual, your business, nonprofit, whatever, municipality, other organization, what would that look like in 5 years from now? What kind of problems would you face in each of these futures? The optimistic one, the moderate one, the pessimistic one. And how can you address them in advance? The opportunities. What kind of opportunities might you face in each of these futures? And how can you seize these opportunities and bring them about ideally? What resources will you need to solve the problems and seize the opportunities in each of these scenarios? And then don't prepare for the optimistic scenario. It's too tempting to do that. Prepare for the pessimistic scenario ideally, or at most the moderate one, which is going to be 2024. And then what information would indicate to you that you're going to either of these futures, the optimistic one, the moderate one, and the pessimistic one? Shift your plans based on the new information that you're getting over time. That and much more is available in my book, Resilience, Adapt and Plan for the New Abnormal of the COVID-19 Coronavirus Pandemic. And I hope this book will prove helpful to you. It's available in all bookstores everywhere, as folks say, if they're still open around you. And you can check out more details at disasteravoidanceexperts.com/adapt. Again, my website with all of my resources and content, disasteravoidanceexperts.com/adapt.